Hi, everyone. Welcome to Waste 360's Nothing Wasted podcast. On every episode, we invite the most interesting people in waste, recycling, and organics to sit down with us and chat candidly about their thoughts, their work, this unique industry, and so much more. So thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure that you all know that Waste Expo Together Online registration is open. You can go to wasteexpo.com to register and check out who's speaking and the amazing content we have lined up for you guys. We're super excited and know you will be too. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Bothwell from Waste 360 with Jeff Wooster, Global Sustainability Director at Dow. Welcome, Jeff, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Liz. I'm happy to be here.
So, Jeff, we normally start in the beginning, so please tell me a little bit about your background and your journey to the world of sustainability.
Sure. So I have been working for Dow for 32 years. I am a chemical engineer by training, and I've spent my whole life developing new polymers and new packaging structures and new plastic resins and new formulations and new end-use markets and new recycling technologies and all sorts of things related to plastic packaging. I started my journey in sustainability from a very young age. I was born on a family dairy farm in northwest Iowa, and I sometimes joke with my friends that I probably was the only second grader that I know that read the Mother Earth News every month when it came in the mail, the subscription addressed to my dad, who spent most of his life working in agriculture, first as a farmer and then in the industry as a salesperson and a researcher at the University of Nebraska in their agronomy department. So I have a lot of experience with agriculture and food. I'm kind of an amateur foodie, and I love food. I love cooking. I love packaging. I love to help companies develop better solutions. And I've been committed to working on environmental sustainability issues for a long, long time. And sometimes when I tell people that I work for a plastics company, they say, "Oh, how does that work with your environmental sustainability needs?" And I say, well, it works great because I have the opportunity to develop materials that actually can help improve sustainability performance in a way that's not intuitive to most people. And anytime you have the chance to do something that's not intuitively obvious to a lot of people, you really have an opportunity to make a big impact because you can do something that the people just don't know to do on their own. And I'm a big believer in science. I'm a big believer in applying technology and providing solutions that are as simple as they need to be, but as sophisticated as they need to be at the same time. So sustainability and packaging, for me, it's all woven together and something I've been really passionate about doing for the last 32 years.
Good for you, and I'd love to hear that story about growing up on the dairy farm as well. That's awesome. And I know, like you said, you've been at Dow for 30 plus years, and it looks like you've been working in sustainable packaging for more than a decade. How have things changed over that time in terms of packaging and materials used and the work that you're doing?
Well, I think overall the approach to sustainability has gotten a lot more sophisticated. People really understand that it's about the big picture. They understand that they need to look at all the impacts and all of the ramifications of making a decision, whether that decision is what type of packaging to use or how you deliver a product to the marketplace or even what products you choose to sell to your consumers. So I think the overall level of sophistication is much, much higher. At the basic fundamental level, though, it's really the same. And that's basically that you want to develop materials that provide as much value as they can and use the fewest resources as they can. And for the users, that means minimizing the cost. And if you think about something like plastic packaging, which I've worked on for a long time, the first part of my career, I really spent developing better materials that allowed our customers to use less plastic in their packaging. So whether you're talking about stretch film that's used to wrap pallets that might have gone from a thickness of 0.8 mils down to 0.7 mils, down to 0.5 mils, and the mil is 1/1000 of an inch for those unaware, or whether it's creating food packaging that requires fewer layers or higher performance barrier materials to better protect the product. The packaging designers have always been interested in developing the most efficient solutions. And the key reason for that is that consumers, when they go to the grocery store or the big box store, they're not looking to buy packaging. They're looking to buy a product. And regardless of what that product is, whether it's food or a shampoo or a screwdriver, they don't want any more packaging than they need to get the product home safely and in good usable condition. And so the packaging designers, for as long as I've been working in the industry, which is 32 years, have always worked to make the most efficient, highest performance, lowest environmental impact solution that they can possibly deliver. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really know or appreciate because they haven't thought about it too much. But if we think about the need for packaging that delivers a product to the consumer, if we think about food as an example, the most important thing is it keeps the food fresh and safe, right? We want our food to arrive at our homes safe. We don't want it contaminated. We don't want microbes growing on it that aren't supposed to be growing on it. We don't want mold growing on it that's not supposed to be growing on it. But we want that food to be delivered to us safely. And then we want it to last in as high a quality a condition as possible for as long as it can, right? If I go to the store and I buy oranges, all I need is something to get the oranges home. But if I go to the store and I buy a filet mignon, I need something that keeps that filet mignon fresh and delicious to eat, because it's a lot of investment and resources in getting that filet mignon to the grocery store where I can pick it up and bring it home and put it on my grill.
Absolutely. And to that point, I know a lot of companies, including Dow, are using packaging as a way to combat food waste. Is that the type of things that you're doing, or are you using different feedstocks as well? Can you talk about that?
Well, we certainly view packaging as something that's essential to human progress. It allows us to have the system of commerce that we enjoy, where we can make food in the country and bring it to people in the cities. It allows us to have a wider variety of food that might not otherwise be available to us. It allows us to transport foods from one place to another safely and efficiently and keep them fresh for a long enough period of time that we can transport them by ground instead of by air, as an example. And so we've always worked on making sure that packaging is protecting the food in the best way possible. And a big part of that is prevent it from going to waste, right? We know from the recent report, Stop Waste, Save Food, that about 30% of our food is wasted. And we've seen that in other reports, so that's not a surprising statistic at all. But what's interesting is that they calculated that if we got rid of all that food waste, that we could reduce the carbon footprint for our whole planet by 8%. And that's because food is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions because of the production and, in fact, the spoilage of the food as well. So I think there's a big opportunity for us to help create a more sustainable planet, a better place for all of us to live by helping to reduce food waste. And packaging is just one of the ways that we can reduce food waste. Refrigeration is important. Consumers buying the right amount of food is certainly important. There's lots of things that help us do that. But packaging is the one that I happen to work on and specialize in. So I'm not working on techniques for applying fertilizer more efficiently in farms, at least not at the present time. At the present time, I'm working on packaging. And that means that we need to make it as efficiently as possible. We need to use it in the smartest way we possibly can use it. And then when the consumer is done with the packaging, we need to be able to recover it and take those molecules that are embedded in the package, whether it's plastic or corrugated or a metal can, and we need to turn those materials into something else of use in a process called recycling. So we need to think about all those things, and all those things can help contribute to a more sustainable planet. But the one that has the biggest impact is saving the food that's currently wasted.
Absolutely. And I know that you and Dal have been doing this for a while. Do you feel like the rest of, and I'm doing this air quotes, world has reached a tipping point about finding real solutions to some of these challenges?
Well, I don't know if we've reached a tipping point yet or not. What I do see is I see a lot more companies taking a more holistic view about food waste, thinking not just about how much packaging do I use, but how does that packaging perform in protecting the food that I'm delivering. And that's really an important thing to do. I was involved about 10 years ago on a project that helped work on defining what was the more optimal amount of packaging to use. And we created through that project kind of a graph that showed that as you use more packaging, you create more packaging waste. But as you use more packaging, you create less food waste. And somewhere in the middle of the curve, there's an optimum where you create the least amount of total waste and you generate the smallest amount of total emissions. And that's really that optimum that as scientists and business people, we need to be on the lookout for. And we need to continuously push our businesses to drive improvements in technology, improvements both in the packaging technologies, but also in the way we deliver products, improvements in the way that our supply chain works, we need to continue pushing for improvements that get us to that minimum, right? We have a limited amount of resources available to us on this planet, and we're using them up at too fast a rate. And so in order to not do that, we either need to reduce our consumption per person, or we need to reduce our population, or we need to be more efficient about how we do things. And most people, given the choice between those three choices, they're going to choose to be more efficient. It's very hard to get people to agree that we want to reduce population, and it's very hard on an individual level to get people to agree to reduce their consumption. But if we can get people to not waste so much, and if we can be more efficient in producing materials, we can achieve a better balance that helps make the planet more sustainable. And there are tremendous opportunities for improvement in those areas that I think can get us to where we need to go. It takes a lot of concerted work. It takes a lot of people working together to make it happen.
Definitely. Is there anything you're working on now that you're especially proud of? I know that we at Waste 360 spoke with you about your collaboration with Bare Naked. Is there any other packaging work that you're doing that you can talk about?
Well, sure. We have a whole range of projects that are really designed to make the system that we operate in more efficient. And a number of years ago, when I started working on sustainability, I started talking about this need to make the system more efficient. So it's relatively straightforward for an individual company to work on a small project that only impacts their organization. It's more challenging to work on a project that affects several organizations. And it's even more complex to work on a project that affects the whole system. But we're really seeing companies and NGOs and government agencies starting to think more holistically about that whole system. And so what we've done is we've tried to put in place a strategy that lets us think about what the system needs to be more successful, and then put in place programs that help drive in the direction that we need to go to make that system more efficient. So for Dow, we have several commitments on sustainability that we've recently announced. One is to reduce our carbon footprint and eventually become carbon neutral, hopefully by 2050. Another one is to reduce the amount of plastic packaging that ends up in the environment, which is something that's outside of our immediate control, but within our influence. And we think it's important that as a leader in the industry that we do help work to influence that drive in the right direction. And so we actively have lots of projects in that space. And then the other one that we're working on as part of our big commitment that we've just recently announced is to make all of our packaging recyclable. So we think one thing that we can do in addition to preventing food waste with our packaging, which we already do, and we're working on improving every day, is that we can make all of our packaging that gets made from our products fully recyclable. Today, about 80% of the packaging that's made from Dow Plastics is easily recyclable in existing systems, but we're working to make that additional 20% recyclable so that we have a better opportunity to capture materials back for reuse. Of course, we have to do a good job of collecting and reusing them. It's not enough to just have them designed correctly, but we're working holistically to make sure that we put in place all of the pieces of the puzzle, or all the steps of the life cycle that we need to do that. So for plastic packaging, that means we design the materials the right way. It means we use them in the most efficient way possible to bring the best food protection and the best product protection to the things that are packaged. It means that we don't use more than necessary, and then we get them back and turn them into new products. And turning them into new products relates back to what we do at the very beginning of the cycle, which is when we manufacture the plastics that we sell into the marketplace. And we need to do that with recycled content materials and other materials that are sourced more sustainably than we have today.
I love hearing you talk about this because, as I mentioned, many of our listeners are waste management professionals and recyclers, and they deal with products at the end of life. So they often say that one solution is to really get the designers and manufacturers and recyclers together early in the process to make products that truly are recyclable and reusable. Do you see this happening more?
I do see it happening more, and certainly the Bare Naked granola pouch is an example of that, where Kellogg's took that product that was in a package that wasn't recyclable before, and they've switched to a newly designed, better technology package that's now fully recyclable. We've had examples of this being implemented all around the world. I'll just give a shout out to my colleagues who work in Latin America and say that they have really led the charge on this, and the conversion to recyclable pouches and bags and other flexible packaging formats in Latin America over the past 2 or 3 years has just been tremendous. Companies like Colombia and Mexico have really been at the forefront of implementing these new technologies, even a little bit ahead of the United States. And certainly we have the need is just as great here, but they've been a little bit quicker about implementing. I think partly due to their desire to innovate and put something new into the marketplace, partly because of their greater need for making sure that the resources get captured and reused in making new products. So, I tell people all the time, I said, I worked the first 15 years of my career designing packaging, and now I'm working to make sure that all those designs actually get taken advantage of, meaning that once we design the products to be recyclable, we have to collect the material and put it back into the recycling system. And I'll just give a simple example on this, and it's a product that we don't make, but I'll just use it as an example, and that's PET bottles used for soft drinks, carbonated soft drinks, and for water in juices and some other products. Those materials are very easily recyclable. They're very easily recycled. They're available to be put into the recycling system practically everywhere in the United States. So anybody that has access to a recycling system in the U.S. can recycle their PET bottles. At least they can put them into the system. And virtually every PET bottle that gets put into the system gets recycled and made into something new, whether that something new is a new bottle or fabric for clothing or carpeting. All those materials get reused and made into new products. Even with all that, we only have a recycling rate in the U.S. for PET bottles of somewhere between 30 and 35%. So that really shows us the opportunity that we have in increasing our collection efficiency. And that means that everybody needs universal access to easy recycling. So I said that practically everybody can recycle PET bottles, but it's not equally available to every person, and it's not equally easy to recycle PET bottles for every person. So a lot of people that live in apartments have to take their bottles and drop them off somewhere. They don't have somebody coming to their front curb and picking them up like people who live in single-family homes do. Some offices have recycling that's very good. Some offices don't have any recycling at all. So there's an opportunity for us to improve the system by looking at where the opportunities are the best. And you've got organizations like the Recycling Partnership and the Sustainable Packaging Coalition and others actively working on trying to drive improvements in the recycling system so that we can get more of those materials back. You've got organizations like Closed Loop who are making investments in companies who are trying to drive higher recycling, but we've got to work with the whole system and make sure that all parts of the system work together in order to be effective.
Definitely. And I know that you've spoken about circular economy and that system, but I also read that you were talking about a different kind of economy. Can you talk about that a little with different loops and a spherical economy?
Yeah, so I like to talk about the spherical economy as kind of the next generation circular economy, or if you're a tech person, you can say circular economy 2.0 maybe. And the reason that I like to talk about this, I'll explain what I mean by that. The reason that I like to talk about the spherical economy is to help people understand that it's not just a simple loop. It's not just a matter of taking PET bottles and turning them into new PET bottles. It's a matter of making sure that when we collect PET bottles, that material is available to be used to make whatever material, whatever new product is the best use of the material. So in nature, all the nutrients get returned to the system and they get reused in the best way possible. So if a tree dies and falls to the ground and rots, the nutrients from that process of the decay of the tree get used to grow whatever plants happen to be growing in that place at that time. And those get eaten by whatever animals happen to come along and eat them at any particular time. So a daffodil doesn't only become a daffodil and a fern doesn't only become a fern, but the nutrients from those materials, when they get put back into the system, can become other products. And it's important for us to recognize that if we want to have an optimized system for technical nutrients, so things like plastics that are getting recycled, if we want to have an optimized system for those technical nutrients, we have to be willing to think about all of the interconnected loops. And we have to realize that if we use polyester to make carpet and to make fabric and to make bottles, and we have available to us a source of polyester, then we should use it in whatever application makes the most sense to use it. And so that gives us a much better opportunity to create a resilient system that provides better sustainability benefits to the planet. If we always optimize the use of all of our materials, we'll use less energy, we'll use fewer materials, we'll create fewer emissions, and we'll generate less waste. Sometimes people think of circular economy as taking a refrigerator and just refurbishing it into a new refrigerator. And that certainly is fine to do. But sometimes the refrigerator is just too crapped out to make into a new refrigerator, and somebody might put it in their garage and make it into a smoker that they smoke meat in. So that's an example of reusing a product for something totally different, and it's better than sending it to the landfill or dumping it in the ditch behind your house. But it allows us to reuse the resources in a way that's more efficient than letting them go to waste. And so if we think about the circular economy as a broader concept, one of many, many, many connected loops or connected cycles or connected systems, and it's not really as simple as a graphical circle, but if we think about the interconnectedness of all those systems, and we want to create a resilient solution that allows us to use our resources as efficiently as possible so that we can have enough food and have enough of the other necessities for the 7 billion people or so that are on this planet, we need to think a bigger picture than we have with just the circular economy. We need to think of a more spherical economy.
I like that because you can visualize that as well. And then what do you think the role of the waste recycling industry?
So the waste management and the recycling industry, which largely are the same industry and involved in the same types of materials, even if they're separate companies in a particular city, are really, really critical. And that is because we have to get the materials back and put them back into the system, right? And for some materials, that's relatively easy and straightforward to do. For some materials, it requires enactment of specific legislation that then drives the collection. Car batteries, for example, in the U.S. are recycled at a very high rate. And the plastic that's used to make car batteries, which is polypropylene, is recycled at a very high rate. And that's because the states have a fee on the batteries that when you buy a new battery, you have to pay a fee on the other old battery when you turn it back in. And that fee helps pay for the collection and shipment of those materials to be recycled. So in the case of batteries, we've enacted legislation that helps drive the collection. And of course, that's important for batteries, not just for the casing, but also because you don't want the contents in the battery to escape into the environment where they would pose a hazard. So that allows for the collection of the inside of the battery as well as the polypropylene in the battery outside. But that's an example of how we've created a system that lets us get the materials back. For things like everyday packaging, products that we use every day, like potato chip wrappers and candy bar wrappers and salad bags and cheese pouches, those items are not quite so easy to collect via a reverse logistics system of the type used for the batteries. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of them and they're very lightweight. And so in order to collect materials where you have a very low weight per item, so each candy bar wrapper is not much material and each potato chip bag is not much material. Whenever you have very low weight items that you need to collect, in order to be efficient in your collection, you need to aggregate them, right? So you need to be able to put all the packaging together for collection in order for the collection burden not to overwhelm the value that's incumbent or inherent in the material itself. And so the recycling and waste management collection systems that we have in place are absolutely critical to the recycling of packaging because it's just not possible to send each potato chip bag back individually.
Right, that makes sense. And so I know you've mentioned looking to other areas beyond the U.S. to, that they're doing a really great job. And I know that Dow has done things in other countries recently. One thing that was really fantastic, I'd love to hear more about, is the Waste Collector Support Fund that you guys have put together for COVID. How's that going? What does that look like? How does that actually help the waste collectors on the ground?
So when the coronavirus pandemic first got started, one of the things that we recognized early on was that the recycling system in countries that relied on informal collectors to collect and aggregate a large amount of the material that gets recycled in those countries was in some cases entirely shut down, in some cases partly shut down. In some cases, the workers were afraid to pick up the trash because of fear of contracting COVID-19 from potential contaminants that might be on the packaging that was left in the environment, and they don't know who had touched it. So we recognized the need to help support the informal sector a couple of ways. One was by providing them with better personal protective equipment so that they could avoid any hazards that they might have with collection of materials. And the other was with just basic necessities because their income was cut off. So money for things like food during the time that their income was shut off. And so we worked with several partner organizations around the world to help create several different mechanisms by which we could collect and distribute some funds to different initiatives that were working with local groups on the ground in different countries where the informal sector is responsible for the collection of a large amount of waste. And we're making some progress on that. We have not hit our goals yet. Global Giving is the partner that we're sort of the global partner that we're working with, and then we have a bunch of other partners like Pixera and Meridian Institute and some others. If you don't have the link that people can use to look that up, I can certainly provide that to you as follow up, and maybe just and maybe that's something that you could provide as way of follow up to your readers. We are closing off the fund at the end of July so that we can distribute all the money. So we just have only a week and a half or so to go on the collection of funds that we'll be distributing.
And then, Jeff, I also read that Dow is working on a plastic project in Nigeria. What does that look like?
So we have projects all over the world with various partners. I think probably the partnership that you were reading about in Nigeria is one on making sure that we collect and repurpose plastic by making it into new items. We've got a couple projects in Africa. We've got Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. We've got projects in India. We've got projects in Latin America in several countries. And the thing that's the common theme about those is that they help support us in one of the several areas that's necessary to create this spherical economy and to really close the loop for our products to make sure that we can collect waste that might otherwise be getting into the environment, and then that we can turn it into something that's new and something useful. Because we know that we have to work to make sure that each step of the process is addressed. And what we try to do is we try to identify where the biggest gap is in an individual location and then work on a project that addresses that particular gap. So if we feel like the gap is collection, we work with partners to set up a collection system. If we think the gap is creating end uses, we work with people to help create new end uses for products. And so all of the projects that we have around the world really fall into one of those particular buckets or more of the buckets. But it's always designed with the intent of fixing the part of the process that's having the most difficulty on its own, and making sure that the whole system can work as it's supposed to.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And then I know you referenced Dell's sustainability goals and that you guys have a bunch of targets heading into 2025 and beyond. Did you want to talk any more about those? I know you touched on 3, but please feel free to add more.
Sure. So a few years ago, we announced our 2025 sustainability goals, which was 7 big goals around sustainability that were for the 10-year period from 2015 to 2025. And for those good at math, I realize that's 11 years, not 10 years. But for that time period, the 2025 goals that we announced as 10-year goals, I just love to throw that in case people are thinking in their heads like, hey, that's 11 years. Anyway, that was our third set of big sustainability goals. So we started with our 2005 goals, which we announced around 1995, and then we did 2015 goals, and now we're on our 2025 goals. The first set of goals was really about reducing our footprint, so using less energy, creating less waste, sort of the standard stuff on sustainability that people tended to work on 10 or 15 years ago. Well, we were working on it more than 25 years ago because we were a little bit ahead of the curve, but that's kind of what I'll call the very basic things that you work on in sustainability, right? It's turning down your thermostat and making sure your house is insulated and using better fuel efficiency vehicles and those kinds of things. Then the second set of 10-year goals that we introduced was really about improving the products that we made and delivered to the marketplace to have a more positive impact in that way. And the latest set of goals is really much more about us creating a blueprint or help setting some framework that lets society work collaboratively to achieve even bigger goals that help drive us to a sustainable existence on this planet. And that was really an ambition that was beyond our thinking 15 years ago. But as we started recognizing that Dow was really a leader in sustainability, that we were more forward-thinking than most of our peers, that we were really out ahead of the curve in things like energy efficiency for industry, and as well as in the last 10 or 15 years, certainly working on issues like plastics in the environment. We were one of the first companies in our industry to really address that issue, and now the whole industry is working on it. So that's a great example of how Dow can really use its leadership in sustainability to drive all of industry to take more action to help fix the problems that we're facing, which are pretty significant, right? If you think about climate change, if you think about some of the other issues that we face as a society, we've got some pretty serious challenges ahead of us, and we need some big thinking, and we need a lot of collaboration at high levels between companies, NGOs, governments, private citizens, and we need leadership to help drive us towards those things. And so we've really been focused on trying to drive the leadership. One of the elements of our 2025 sustainability goals is really around circular economy. And it said that we will implement a certain number of major projects on circular economy. And we're well on our way to doing that as a company. We've kind of added some more specifics to that with the commitments that we just announced a month or so ago. But I'm really happy and pleased to see our leadership as a company and to see Jim Fitterling, the CEO of Dow, and other leaders of our company recognize that we have both the opportunity and also really the responsibility to be leaders because we can and because it's needed, right? Society needs companies to step up and say, this is what we're going to do to make sure that we have a sustainable existence on this planet, to make sure that all of our products are safe and healthy and good for the people and the animals and the plants and the atmosphere and everything else. And so it's been a great ride for me in terms of the experience of my career and being able to contribute to that and make a lasting difference, not just to the success of my company, but also to the health of our planet, which has been very rewarding.
Oh, I bet that's rewarding. And like you said, Dow is a leader in sustainability. You guys were doing this before. It was really a cool thing to do. But for it to really take hold, corporate America needs to know that it's not doing good for the sake of doing good, that it's actually good for business. Can you talk about how Dow has really done well with this?
That's absolutely critical. And of course, we determined early on when we started working on sustainability that it really was good for business, right? We could make investments in things like energy savings that would yield a multiple times return on the amount of energy that we had to purchase to run our manufacturing plants. We certainly have seen many, many examples where we've made investments in sustainability and they've returned many times over in terms of either direct cost savings or access to new markets or the opportunity to create new products and new applications that are valued by our customers, that the customers want to implement. And we'll continue to do that. That's part of our culture. Our CEO, our current CEO, Jim Fitterling, when he became the CEO, set an ambition for our company to be the most innovative, customer-centric, sustainable, and inclusive material science company in the world. And so everything that we do is really focused on those four things, driving a culture of inclusion and making sure that all of our employees can bring their whole selves to work and contribute fully and live up to their potential, enjoy rewarding careers where they benefit the company and society, making sure that we're as sustainable as possible, not only in our operations, but in the way we provide products to the marketplace and how we allow our customers to use our products. We want everybody to be sustainable, not just our own operations, right? And then, of course, being customer-centric and innovative. We've long been an R&D company focused on R&D, but we really are focused on making sure that we're innovating the right technologies that our customers can get value from. And if we want a customer to use our product, we have to show them that it has value to them. They will implement what's beneficial to them. It's our goal to make sure that all of those offerings are beneficial to them and to society and to the planet. And when we can sort of hit that triple bottom line of making sure that it benefits all the parties, we really think we have a great opportunity for driving future success of our company and better sustainability for our planet.
Oh, absolutely. And I love your passion, Jeff. Can you share some advice for the next generation of professionals who are getting into sustainability?
Yeah, and I get this question all the time. People say, how can I work on sustainability? And I tell them, I say, well, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I said, but the most important thing to recognize is that you don't have to have a job that's in the sustainability department in order to work on sustainability. No matter what function of your company you work in, you can work on sustainability because it really cuts across our entire business enterprise. It cuts across society. You can find ways to contribute to the success of the company that contribute to the benefit of the planet and to making our existence here a more sustainable one, even if you work in a function that you might think it doesn't make logical sense that you'd be able to do that. And as an example of that, I have an employee who works in a warehouse, sort of as a coordinator of movement of materials in a warehouse that I mentor. And she's asked me many times, initially when we started talking, she said, I'm not sure how this relates to sustainability. And I said, well, how do you allocate your warehouse space? How do you decide how to move things? How do you keep an inventory so that when you look for something, you don't have to go out to the warehouse and drive the fork truck up and down the rows 18 times looking for a box? You know right where it is and you can go to it immediately. I said, all those things benefit the company by making us more efficient. They benefit society by reducing the amount of emissions generated by driving the fork truck up and down those aisles. And they benefit the planet by helping to conserve the natural resources that we have available to us in limited quantities. So I always give people the advice to look for sustainability in whatever you do, wherever you do it, whether that's at home or at work or in your extracurricular activities. There's always a way to incorporate sustainability if you think about it holistically. And if you start doing small projects in your area of expertise, you'll be able to figure out fairly quickly whether you want a full-time job where your projects are just sustainability focused, but where you're dependent on other people to actually implement things, or you want to continue on in the job that you have now, which is implementing things, and you just bring the sustainability focus to that implementation. And I'll say it's usually on about a ratio of 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, meaning that 75% or 80% of the people decide that the way they want to impact sustainability is to continue doing their regular jobs, because normally they pick those jobs because it's something they like doing. And they want to implement sustainability in their current job and in their current role, which gives them the best of both worlds. And that's something that most people hadn't thought about the opportunity to do, at least not, say, 3 or 4 years ago. It's getting better now because I've told enough of our people internally about the opportunity to do this. But I think, if you look back 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, people saw sustainability as an isolated thing and not as an integrated thing. And so they thought working in sustainability meant working in the sustainability team. Now they recognize that it's about incorporating sustainability into whatever team they happen to be working on.
Absolutely. I love that holistic advice and approach. I mean, that really can translate to any position for any person. That's awesome.
Yes. And it takes all of us.
And
so I think it's important that everybody does their part and contributes a little bit. I like to say with food waste as an example, right? We have 7 billion people on the planet. 6 billion of them are well nourished. 1 billion are not properly nourished, meaning either they don't get enough calories or they don't get the right nutrition in forms of vitamins and minerals and the other things that they need to be fully healthy. But we waste a third of our food. So we actually have enough food for 10 billion people, and we waste a third of it. So if we could just divert some of that food that we waste to the people who need better nutrition, we would have an abundance of food available to us. And we wouldn't need to clear cut forests to plant new crops. We wouldn't need to let pasture graze on land that's not meant to have pasture grazing on it. We wouldn't need to cut down the rainforest or remove natural habitats that might be necessary for certain species to continue to exist. We wouldn't need to have a negative impact at all, and we can provide food for a lot more people if we just reduce our food waste.
Definitely, and I think that's what a lot of food waste pioneers say, right? It's the most fixable problem. So it's optimistic but frustrating at the same time.
It is, and we've made progress, but we make progress in one area and we have trouble in another area. If you look at the differences between developing economies and developed economies, and you look at what gets wasted, the points along the supply chain where the food is wasted are quite different. In the U.S., consumers waste food in their homes. They buy food and they don't eat it and they throw it away. If you go to the developing economies, the food doesn't even make it from the farm to the distribution center because the transportation system is not adequate. but people don't buy an excess of food because they can't afford to. And so they don't have as much food waste in the home of the type that we have in the U.S. However, they do still have food waste in the home. And I was in Thailand last year, and I went to a small village that's pioneering a new zero waste concept to recycle all their plastic and compost all their food waste. And they collect a lot of food scraps that they compost. So, even in a place where you would think that people would be more cautious about not wasting food, there is still the opportunity to reduce waste.
Definitely. And then before I let you go, Jeff, I'd love to hear your thoughts on chemical recycling. It seems you see it as a big solution, so I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So chemical recycling or feedstock recycling means taking plastics and converting them back into their basic building blocks and then making them into new plastics. So it's kind of like the way that if you think about it in an analogous manner to the way that corrugated is recycled. So corrugated that's used to make boxes for shipping, what some people call cardboard, right? But if you cut through it with a utility knife and you look in it, you can sort of see that corrugated pattern, which is the folded paper that gives it its strength. If you think about how corrugated gets recycled, you have the opportunity to reuse the boxes, which Frito-Lay does, for example, in shipping their potato chips around. And they reuse the boxes, I think, 6 or 7 times. And that's a great way to reuse a product. But then when the package isn't good enough to reuse anymore and you send it to the recycling plant, they take that box and they break it down into the fibers that it started life as, and then they make new paper, and then they fold that paper into new corrugated. They don't take the cardboard box and unfold the paper and then refold it, because that's just not practical to do. You can't unglue the corrugated that's been made and refold the paper and end up with a quality product. So if we think about feedstock recycling for plastics the same way, it's not a matter of taking the detergent bottle and washing it and chopping it and reforming it into another detergent bottle, like with mechanical recycling. It's really more like how you recycle corrugated, which is you take it and you break it down into your basic building blocks. In this case, it's the monomers and the products that are used as the original feedstock, and then you convert those into brand new plastics. That has a couple advantages. One is that you can combine all different types of packaging and you can mix them together and still get a good quality product. The other one is that you can remove any contamination, which allows you to have products that are suitable for use in food contact applications and other applications that require you to know that you don't have contaminants in there, which is difficult to do, more difficult to do with mechanical recycling. It doesn't mean that we don't think mechanical recycling is useful. We think mechanical recycling is very, very important for things like milk bottles and detergent bottles and stretch film and PET bottles used for water and soft drinks. And that's because those products are available in relatively pure form at relatively high quantities, right? There's lots of detergent bottles available. There's lots of milk jugs available in this country, at least. There's lots of PET bottles available. So it's relatively easy to aggregate those and to get a large enough quantity that you can build a recycling plant that can operate at scale that gives it the economics it needs to be competitive, and you can make very good use of those materials. And that's an easier thing to do than feedstock recycling, in the same way that reusing a corrugated box for potato chips is easier than recycling the box to make a new one, right? So you always do the thing that gets you the best value and the least impact. So reusing the corrugated box or doing mechanical recycling of milk jugs is an easier operation with less energy being input and less resources being used to actually do the reprocessing. But for all those products that we can't do mechanical recycling for, it makes a lot of sense to do feedstock recycling. We can get larger volumes, we can get more material, we can get better quality of output, we can make all the different types of grades of plastics that we need for all the different applications. Potato chips have a different requirement than cheese, and so they need different packaging, right? We can't just put everything in the same package, it just won't work. So we need to have different types of materials available to us, and doing feedstock recycling allows us a better flexibility. It puts more resilience in the system to be able to make a variety of products according to whatever the market needs.
Absolutely. And so tell me what's next for you and for Dow. What are you working on now?
Well, we're continuing to up the efforts that we have in driving the spherical economy. We have lots of projects designed around keeping plastic waste out of the environment, which we know is a very important issue for consumers and governments around the world. We're making sure that those projects are integrated with our efforts to implement recycling, both conventional mechanical recycling as well as feedstock recycling. And it's really our goal to make sure that all of our products can be recycled, and as much of as many of those products as possible get put back into the circular economy. And I'll use the term generically there, put back into the circular economy so that the value can be retained and reused, and we won't need to extract as many resources out of the earth.
Great. Well, I really respect your passion. And how can our listeners hear more about what you're doing or follow your work?
Well, we have a website. You can go to the Dow.com website and look for material on sustainability and packaging. And we have a campaign called Don't Let It Go to Waste, helping people understand how they can do a better job recycling and how we can make used materials into brand new materials. They can find more information from that on the web as well.
Oh, that sounds great. We'll definitely check it out. Well, thank you for sharing all of your expertise and your passion with us. We love the work you're doing and we'll continue to follow. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Liz. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners today, and wish you a great day.
You too. Stay well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.